They were stars who lit up the world with talent, beauty, and brilliance. Yet behind the applause and flashing lights, they faced one of the most feared diseases of the 20th century, HIV and AIDS. At a time when silence was safer than truth, some chose to speak, some fought in the shadows, and others became unwilling symbols of a crisis that spared no one. These stories are not just about death, but about courage, resilience, and the power to inspire. Today we remember 7 famous lives whose battles with HIV and AIDS left a legacy far beyond their final days. 1. Magic Johnson. November 7th, 1991. The world of sports froze. Standing before cameras and microphones, NBA legend Earvin "Magic" Johnson delivered a message that shook not only basketball, but the entire globe. He was HIV positive. For years, AIDS had been whispered about with fear and stigma, often seen as something distant, belonging to someone else. But when Magic Johnson spoke those words, it became real for millions who adored him as a champion, a role model, and a symbol of strength. Many thought it was the end of his career, perhaps even his life. Instead, Magic turned his diagnosis into a turning point. He retired from the Lakers but refused to fade away. With groundbreaking treatments, relentless optimism, and the heart of a fighter, he showed the world that HIV was not an immediate death sentence. He founded the Magic Johnson Foundation, raising awareness, promoting testing, and giving hope to communities most affected. Decades later, Magic Johnson is still here, thriving, smiling, inspiring. His story redefined what it means to live with HIV. More than an athlete, he became proof that survival is possible, that life continues, and that courage can turn tragedy into triumph. 2. Elizabeth Glaser. Her story didn't begin on the stage or the silver screen. It began in a hospital room during what should have been one of the happiest moments of her life, the birth of her child. In the early 1980s, Elizabeth Glaser received a blood transfusion during childbirth, a routine procedure that unknowingly infected her with HIV. She later passed the virus to her daughter and son, setting into motion a tragedy that no parent should ever endure. When her daughter died at just 7 years old, Elizabeth could have collapsed under the weight of grief. Instead, she transformed her pain into purpose. She founded the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, determined to fight for children like hers who were battling a disease that the world preferred not to see. She testified before Congress, her voice filled with both heartbreak and fire, demanding funding, research, and compassion for families devastated by HIV. Elizabeth became not just a mother in mourning, but a warrior for millions of children. Though she passed away in 1994 at the age of 47, her mission lived on. Her foundation continues to raise billions of dollars for pediatric AIDS research and treatment, saving lives every single day. Elizabeth Glaser's legacy proves that even in the darkest moments, one person's courage can light the way for countless others. 3. Isaac Asimov. He was the prophet of tomorrow, a man whose imagination stretched across galaxies. Isaac Asimov wasn't just a writer, he was a visionary. With over 500 books to his name, he shaped the way millions saw science, technology, and the future. Yet even the greatest minds are not invincible. In 1983, Asimov underwent routine heart surgery. What should have been a life-saving procedure turned tragic when a tainted blood transfusion infected him with HIV. At a time when the stigma was unbearable, he chose silence. Instead of public confession, he did what he had always done best. He wrote. While the virus quietly weakened his body, he poured the last of his brilliance into essays, novels, and the final volume of his autobiography, completed just days before his death. On April 6, 1992, Isaac Asimov passed away from complications related to AIDS. For years, the truth of his illness remained hidden at the request of his family, only coming to light later. When it did, the revelation was a painful reminder that even the brightest stars can burn out too soon. Yet in that silence, Asimov still spoke through the universes he created, the ideas he planted, and the hope he gave for futures not yet written. Or, Gia Karangi. Before the word supermodel became a global phenomenon, there was Gia Karangi. In the late 1970s, she stormed into the fashion world like a hurricane in heels, magnetic, wild, and unforgettable. Her face graced the covers of Vogue and Cosmopolitan, Her presence demanded attention on runways, and her allure captivated designers and photographers alike. Gia wasn't just beautiful, she was iconic. But behind the flashing cameras was a fragile young woman battling demons that the industry chose to ignore. Loneliness and addiction pulled her into a downward spiral, and by the mid-1980s, Gia contracted HIV through intravenous drug use. In 1986, at only 26 years old, she died alone in a hospital, her fame forgotten by the same world that once celebrated her beauty. Yet Gia's story did not vanish with her. Her life became a warning and a symbol. Documentaries, biographies, and films, most famously with Angelina Jolie portraying her, kept her memory alive. Gia Karangi remains a haunting reminder that beauty cannot shield you from pain, that fame cannot save you from tragedy, and that vulnerability can sometimes be the most powerful legacy of all. 5. Brad Davis. He was raw, electric, and unforgettable. Brad Davis exploded into stardom with his role in Midnight Express, a performance so powerful it earned him a Golden Globe and etched his name into Hollywood history. Audiences saw him as a golden boy with haunted eyes, a man who could turn pain into poetry on screen. But off camera, another kind of pain was consuming him. In the late 1980s, Davis was diagnosed with HIV. At that time, the disease was synonymous with silence, exile, and shame. Yet Brad kept working. He took roles, stepped onto sets, and refused to let the diagnosis define him. But as his health declined, Hollywood turned its back. He grew more outspoken, condemning the government's inaction and society's unwillingness to confront the crisis. By 1991, the suffering had become unbearable. On September 8th, at just 41 years old, Brad Davis chose to end his life with medical assistance. His decision shocked Hollywood, not only because of his talent lost too soon, but because of the defiance it represented. Brad Davis refused to let shame or silence dictate the final chapter of his story. He left the world on his own terms, as fiercely as he had lived. 6. Amanda Blake. For nearly 2 decades, Amanda Blake was America's sweetheart. As Kitty Russell on Gunsmoke, she was fiery, charming, and tough enough to hold her own in a man's world. Millions tuned in week after week, never imagining that behind the smile and the red hair, she was fighting a battle no one could see. By the late 1980s, rumors began to swirl. AIDS. At first, she denied it. How could she not? The stigma was crushing, the whispers cruel. But in 1989, Amanda did something few had the courage to do. She stepped forward and told the world she was living with AIDS. Suddenly, the disease had a new face, a beloved actress who had graced living rooms for years. She didn't stop there. Amanda became a fierce advocate, recording public service announcements, speaking about safe sex, and challenging the silence that had cost so many lives. On August 16, 1989, Amanda Blake passed away at 60, but she did not go quietly. She went as a fighter, a truth teller, and a voice for the voiceless. In a world that wanted silence, Amanda roared, and her courage still echoes today. 7. Ofra Haza. She was called the Madonna of the East, a voice that blended ancient Yemenite tradition with modern pop, captivating audiences across the globe. Ofra Haza was more than a singer. She was Israel's cultural jewel, a woman whose haunting melodies carried both joy and sorrow in equal measure. Her music reached far beyond her homeland, earning her international fame and a devoted following. But behind the spotlight, Ofra was fighting a battle she never made public. In 2000, at just 42 years old, she died suddenly. The official cause was listed as pneumonia, but whispers soon spread. It was later revealed that she had been living with HIV, likely contracted from her husband. The secrecy surrounding her illness mirrored the stigma that still clung tightly to the disease. Even at the dawn of a new millennium, her death stunned fans, not because they felt deceived, but because they were heartbroken. If AIDS could claim a voice as pure and radiant as hers, then no one was truly safe. Yet her songs live on, from timeless albums to her unforgettable performance in The Prince of Egypt. Even in silence, Ofra Haza's voice continues to soar, reminding us that angels may fall, but their music never dies. These 7 stories remind us that HIV and AIDS were never just about statistics or headlines. They were about people who created, inspired, and loved. From Magic Johnson's resilience to Elizabeth Glazer's fight for children, from Isaac Asimov's silent genius to Gia Karangi's tragic beauty, from Brad Davis's defiance to Amanda Blake's roar of truth, and finally, Ofra Haza's haunting voice, their lives still echo today. Each of them broke silence in their own way, turning private pain into public legacy. And while the world has made progress, the fight against stigma and the pursuit of compassion must continue. Their stories are not only about loss, but also about courage, hope, and the enduring power of the human spirit. If their journeys moved you, share this video so their voices reach even further. Subscribe for more stories that deserve to be remembered, and let's keep their legacies alive. Because remembrance is resistance, and memory is power.